picking up from last week, where I was showing some tips and tricks that I use to learn how to code, like when I was learning different languages. I wish I had these tools available for me. I wish I had this information, but I was saying like when you're using Udemy and the modules that they provide, how you can use the testing that they have in these applications like Code Wars or whatever platform that they're having you learn on to do your little projects. Use the test that they give you. So then I was wondering because I've been in quality assurance since like maybe about 15 years now, since 2009, and getting into automation and getting to work more with developers, learning about unit tests. I wondered to myself if it would be helpful and beneficial, and if you'd write more efficient code, if it would help you learn faster how to code, if you actually learned how to test and how to test your code first. So, so I want to talk about that today, right? I want to talk about that today. Would it be a better experience, especially if for people who didn't go to college for computer science, things like that. But if you are, if you jump into a boot camp and they say, all right, well, this is what a string is, this is what this is, and now go ahead and write some code, and they try to compress that into like six weeks, maybe 3 months, whatever. Um, would it and from what I've seen from all the different bootcamp graduates, they have absolutely no idea how to test their application. They don't even know what testing is. They have no idea what unit testing is. So I was wondering, I was wondering if you were to actually learn how to test the principles of testing your code, would that allow you to write better code and learn it a lot much faster? Because a lot of times, if you know how to test for what you want to happen, you can actually build it better. Knowing how to test the outcome can have you write the code to get that outcome better. So that's one of my thoughts, and I wanted to show you now how to actually get into writing your test for your code first when you're learning, right? Test driven development, very, very great practice and principle. And I'm wondering if a offset of test driven development can actually help you learn to code better. So that's the topic for today. Let's get into the show. Welcome to the episode of Software Explorations, Concept and Overviews, hosted by your truly Tech Coach Ralph, where we are entering the twin. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about not exactly test-driven development, but maybe some of the principles of test-driven development. If you can use test-driven development and learning how to test before learning exactly how to write your code in depth, so you don't end up writing a bunch of code and then hopefully it works. The coding pray method, that is not the best method to follow. So we're going to be talking about, can we write our code after we write our test? All right, so that's the plan for today. Let's jump into it. We're going to be using Python because that's probably one of the easier languages to learn, especially for beginners. Like people always ask me, should I learn Java first? Should I learn Python? And I'm like, although you'll be making a lot more money and you will have more opportunities for Java, the learning curve is huge between Java and Python. So you might want to spend a few months to learn Python and then learn more, add more languages, add Java, add C#, add add Go, add Ruby, whatever other languages that you want to add on. But maybe getting started off with Python might be the easier way to go. I have a link for the Python course that I took on Udemy about 2 years ago in the description. So if you want to try it out, feel free to click on the link and go from there. But we're going to get started, right? So first thing we're going to be investigating one of the testing frameworks in Python called PyTest, right? So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so we're going to start looking at PyTest, which is the testing framework for Python. Quick description: the PyTest framework makes it easy to write small, readable tests and can scale to support complex functional testing for applications and libraries, right? PyTest requires Python 3.8 and up, or Py 3. So, and it gives a quick example of how a test would look in using PyTest, but this would be the function. If you're taking a Python course already, this would be your function definition. and it's saying you're for ink, and then you're passing the variable of x into there, and it'll say return x plus 1. So your test answer is going to be assert that if you pass in a 3, it should equal to 5, which I think that test would fail because 3 plus 1 would be 4. And that is what happens here, right? But what I'm saying now is before you even write this function right here, you should have this test written first, and then you would write a test that would make this pass. All right. That is, and I'm just wondering if that would be more helpful when somebody is learning how to code, um, before they just go in. Like, I mean, this is a pretty simple example, but as code gets more complex, and as you have your functions doing more things, you like one little change in your code can destroy the whole thing. So I'm like, all right, if we learn how to test early and run our test often, would that give us a better pathway, a better gateway into being successful? So I'm gonna jump over into PyTest, which is it's from JetBrains, one of my favorite IDE companies. They have IDEs for pretty much Java, WebStorm, for Java, JavaScript, Python, and a bunch of other stuff like for But I love using their software because it just makes it so much easier to integrate with. But first up, let's just take a quick look on, before we go there, I just want to see how we can get started. So in order to install PyTest, we're going to have to run these commands. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this smaller like that. And I'm going to go into my IDE of PyCharm. So pretty much in all the courses that I've taken, they've never spoken about or showed how to actually test your code. The platforms that they use for you to learn, they have testing in place to make sure if you get it right or wrong. But there's never an explanation on how do you actually test your code? How do you write unit tests? How do you see if what you're doing actually works? It's like, just write it. And I understand because they want you to see immediate results. But what about when the course is over and you're trying something and it doesn't work? And or you get that job and now you don't have any unit tests written. You don't know how to write unit tests, and you make a change and somewhere totally unrelated, or that you thought was unrelated, it breaks. So for me, this is twofold, right? It's learning how to test so that you can learn how to code, and then also learning how to test so that you can prevent a catastrophic event, getting fired, things like that. Right. So let's just jump into it. We're gonna follow the guide on to install PyTest, and then we're going to start writing some different tests. All right. So let's do pip install dash u and then say PyTest. All right, so PyTest is installed. We're going to, and that was really, really quick. We're going to do PyTest dash dash version. And now we have 8.3.4. So we're just going to recreate this exact same test right here, and then we're gonna just do some different things, right? But I'm not gonna write this first. I'm gonna actually do the test first, right? And you'll see how I go through this, right? So I'm going to expand this for now. Let's go and do this here and this here. And I'm going to create a new file. And let me do a new Python file. And I'm going to call this, so you see how they have like unit tests here. I'm not going to do this for now. I'm just going to create a regular Python file. And we'll call this a software exploration test first, right? So we have our file created, and we're going to say, right, what if we do, I'll do a comment here. I'm gonna say, write the code goes here. And I'll put another comment here. I'm saying the tests go here. All right. So if we follow along with the first that they created, we'll say define, and we'll say I'm not going to say test answer because this is an addition. Define sum, right? And we say assert. So what assert does is saying that it's like, what do I want to validate? What do I want to expect? What do I want to assert? And I'm going to say that and one of the principles of test-driven development, as soon as you have an error, then you go write the code to fix that error, right? So if I say that oh wait, sorry, this should be not sum but test sum, right? We want to test that our sum is going to be correct. So because that's a test, right? So we're going to say assert that sum, and then we're going to open our parentheses, and we're going to say equals equals, and it's going to be whatever we're going to pass in, right? Let's say we put in 4 for now, and we say we're going to, there's no writing the wrong language, right? So assert sum equals 4, and now if we were to actually run this, let me see what's going to happen here. So it says that sum takes at least one positional argument. All right, so I need to pass. So I need to say, if I was to pass in 3 into the sum, then my answer should be 4. So if I run it, this is all right. So type error int object is not irritable. Iterable, me and my pronunciations. All right. So now, because I do not have a function named sum, this is not going to work. So I need to create my function named sum. So let's say define. We call that sum, and we're going to say. So we could say x here for what we're going to be passing in. And we could say just return 4, right? If we do return 4, then this would pass, right? So let's run this. All right, so when I run this here, right, it's saying that the test passed. But why did it pass? Because I'm just returning a 4 up here. So similar to what we were talking about the other day. So now if I do, so let's say I say this is test sum with 4, or no, we can even do it this way, right? Let's say we do test sum, right? And now we say, all right, assert sum. If we pass in 4, this should actually equals 5, right? So I run this, and now it fails. Why does it fail? Because it actually expected a 5, but it actually got 4, because I want whatever I pass in here to add 1 to it, right? So what I would want to do to calculate it correctly, if I say x plus 1, right? And now I run this again. And now both of my tests pass. All right. So now if I add another test, assert sum, and I pass 10, this should equal 11, right? Run my test again. Not sure why I'm getting that error, but let's see. Oh, See, it failed correctly because I put the wrong equal. But if I make it to 11 and I run it again, and now it passes, right? But I don't actually like the name of this function because it's not the sum. It is let's call this add. Let me do a inside of Python. You can do inside of Parchment. You can do a refactor, and I say add 1 to any number. So now this is a more accurate name for the function. And now if I can do a bunch of these. I say, all right, this if I do 12, this should be 13. If I do 21, this should be 22. If I do 100, it should be 101. So now when I run this test, everything should pass, right? See, everything passes. So that is the example that we got from the PyTest, right? And like I always do, I don't like to just use what somebody else gives me. I want to explore it on my own. So we're going to expand this now. We're going to create some of our own tests. So I'm going to create another. I'm going to write it up here, actually. I'm going to create another. And no, I'm going to also change this to be named test add 1 number to any number, right? And now this one is going to do define test add any 2 numbers together, right? And I'm going to open that, and I'm going to say here, and I'm going to say assert. And if I name my function add any 2 numbers together, which could easily call it sum, or let's say sum of 2 numbers. Let's call it sum of 2 numbers. Open my parentheses, and these 2 numbers. So it should take 2 variables, right? So let's call it number 1, number 2. Open that, and it should equal. Let's say we say the first one is going to equal 2, right? So any 2 numbers that you pass, it should equal 2. But we have a bunch of errors because guess what? These functions do not exist. They do not exist. This function does not exist, right? So that's why we got all these errors over here. So if I run it, it is going to fail. And it fails because sum of 2 numbers sum of 2 numbers. Let me take out the together. I don't like the together in there. Sum of 2 numbers, right? Easy name. You know exactly what it's doing. I'm gonna run it again. And I'm using the methodology of run often and early. Run early and often, right? So our error is that the sum of 2 numbers is not defined. So what does that mean? Well, we could look it up in Google Stack Overflow tells us is not defined. I'll tell you right now, it means that it does not exist, as we can see up here, right? So I'm going to say define sum of 2 numbers, and I'm going to just go like that, and I'm just going to say pass for now, right? And when I run it again, run that again. All right, so now we have an error. Let's check our error again. And it says number 1 is not defined, which I made a mistake. Right? So my mistake is it should not be number 1 here because that's going to be in this function. So it should be like 1 and 1. And let's do a couple of different examples of numbers that you can add that's going to give you the 2. So let's say 0 and 2, or 0 and 2. Any other numbers you can add? I think it was pretty much, unless we go into negatives, but that's pretty much what we can add in order to, you know what, let's try negative. Who knows? Let's try negative, right? Let's say we do -2. Did you do -2 and 4? Let's see what happens, right? So if we were to do this and we run it now, and you see like I made a mistake and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is wrong. This is not how I should be passing this. And so it takes some time to wrap your mind around understanding like how to get firmware testing. But I think it is time well spent if you learn how to test first and then now now we're gonna go write our code, right? So it says that type error sum of two numbers takes 0 positional arguments, so there's nothing that's being passed in here, but we gave 2 positional arguments, right? So what we're going to do is say, all right, so we're gonna pass our 2 positional arguments. We're going to say, now we're gonna say number 1 and number 2. Okay, so now you see how these popped up as number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2. I don't know. I'm not sure if this negative is going to work. We'll find out, right? Because do I remember all the ins and outs of Python? No, I don't. But we're going to run it again. See what happens. And it tells us that it expected 2, it got a none. It expected 2, it got a none. Why did it get a none? Because I'm not doing anything here. I'm just saying pass, right? So now let's write our next step of the code. We're going to say that return number 1 plus number 2. Simple as that. Now we're going to run it again. See, I wrote 1 line of code and I'm running it again. And would you look at that? Even the negative worked, right? Everything passed here. Everything passed. If I was to do, so if I do I think I'm going to do a class test cases, if that works. And then I indent over here. So now I should be able to run my entire class, right? And you see, I don't know what's up with this configuration. When you're doing a class, you need the self parameter for it. All right, let's try running it again. I wonder what's causing this over here. Provide a qualified name for a function, class, or module. Let's run it. Now everything passed. So we added our self, and everything passed. Like as you get into class, they'll explain what the self is and all, and how to do the classes, which that is important. Understanding the concept is important, but I think when it comes to writing the code, getting a better understanding of how to actually test the code is what makes a huge, huge difference. All right. So, so we have our 2 tests. Let's go. And so now if we do a bunch more, and we say instead of just 2s, we say 6 and 8. Like for this one, you need to know a little bit of math. Say 14. Actually, no. I'm gonna type it all out just so we can get some additional reps in. All right. Assert sum of 2 numbers, and we say 6, 8 should equal 14. Assert sum of 2 numbers. Let's say 10 and 5 would be 15. Assert sum of 2 numbers, and we're going to say 2012 and 10 is going to be 2022, right? So if we run all of these should all pass if our math is correct. So the same way, when we run it and we hard code our answer, now we work backwards to make sure that all the different parameters will work, right? So let's give that a run. I'm going to run this one individually. Right, still works. If I run the whole class, everything's passing, right? So now let's do another one. Let's do another one. And because we did addition and stuff like that. What about if we are trying to pass in a what if we're trying to pass something in, right? So let's say we do define test return entered name with hello, right? So, all right, we have ourself, and we say assert name check, and it's going to be with Allison, for lack of a better name. How do you spell Allison? Let's go with one L. I don't know. And we say equals hello, Allison. Right? So passing Allison into the name check, it should return hello, Allison. All right. So if we go and we run this test right now, it's going to fail. What's the answer you think you're gonna like? What's gonna be the error that you think it fails for? So let's see. If we look at the failure, it says name check is not defined. If you guess name check like a not defined error, then you are correct. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, I guess we need to create a function that defines the name check. All right, probably not the best function name, but we'll get better as time goes. So name check, and we do that, and we're just gonna say pass for now, right? And we are going to run our test again. Continue anyways, and it fails, but it fails for a different reason. If you guess it was because of the positional arguments, then you are correct. But this is the point that I'm making though. Writing your test of what you expect to pass, and then because what if you thought all right, you have your test and you thought you wrote your code beautifully, and it fails. Well, having your test is going to writing your expectations first, and then you see that expectation fail. You're going to have a lot more confidence when you write your code and you see it pass, right? So let's continue. So it says that our positional argument. So I'm going to be able to say I'm going to pass in the name, right? So now we run it again. So what I like to do is I'll run the test for the particular method that I'm working on, that I'm building, and then after that method is correct and is doing everything that I want it to do, then I say, all right, run the entire run everything. All right. So we have. So now our error now is saying that it was expecting hello, Allison, but it got nothing. Why did it get none? Because we're just redoing a pass here, right? So what if I was to do, instead of a pass, I say return, and I say return hello, comma, Allison, right? Now we run it again, and our test passes. Our test passes. However, there's a caveat, because all right, we only have one test that we're asserting. What if we say, all right, but what if we say, all right, assert name check, and we pass in tech coach Ralph, and we say hello. We expect hello, tech coach Ralph. What if we do assert name check, and we say Yakar, my friend Yakar, and we say hello Yakar. So we got the first one to pass. Now I'm passing in a bunch of different tests to see what happens. Right? Say assert name check. We'll say Roxy, my friend Roxy. Roxy in the scrubs, and we say hello, Roxy. I'm gonna say, I'm actually gonna say, because my friend, I renamed her to coding nurse Roxy. I'm gonna say coding Nurse Roxy. And for your car, I'm going to say your car, AKA Mr. Tech dash Meek. And so I would expect to get back, hello, your car, AKA Mr. Technique. And last but certainly not least, my best friend, Mitch. Catch these hands of, no, actually, no, it's Mitch for the people, Mitch, all right? And I would expect to get back, hello, and I'm just gonna copy this because it's too much to type out. Get rid of the space over here. All right, so I have this one. This one is passing. We know we just added 1, 2, 3, 4 more tests. Okay, and now if I go and I run this test, is it gonna pass? Is it going to pass? The answer is negative, Ghostwriter. Why did it fail? So it was expecting to find hello, Tech Coach Ralph. It found hello, Allison. Let me see. Did it do any other tests? So it stopped. It even stopped at that test, right? So what if I did this instead, right? What if I said, all right, actually there's not much I can do instead. I could do, right? We can say, you'll learn this in the Python course. Let's say we do a f string, and we say instead of saying Allison here, we say, how do you do it again in Python? We say name, right? So we're passing in the name into this variable. So whatever name we pass into name check, it should pass it here, and we should, so this should work at this point. Let's give it a go, right? Let's give it a go. We say run our test here. And this thing is so annoying, but okay, continue anyways. And it still failed. Why does it still fail? Let's find out. So we're going to review. And it's failing on, because we have 2 year cards. That's why. So let's go get that out. And so that's just an error in our test. But that way we get to see, because a lot of times you'll make an error and you'll be like looking all over trying to figure it out. But if you had your test available, it would tell you where the issue lies. Like from our test, we're able to see that we didn't have our function defined. We didn't have the right parameters. And then for here, we were able to see that, the error is within our test that we're trying to validate and not the actual code. So we fixed that, and then we run it again. And everything passes. All right. So we have my name, your car's name, Roxy's name, Mitch's name. They all passed. And then after I have this one function passing, I'm gonna run all my test cases, because I want to make sure that I didn't break anything else. I mean, I know I didn't break anything else in this case because I didn't work on any other functions. But so let's run it all. Everything is passing, right? Everything is passing. All right. So those are some examples, right? Those are some examples that we have. What about if we wanted to create a function that it uses the test the add any 2 numbers together, and it does add 1 to any number, right? So let's say we want to add 2 numbers together and then add 1 to it, right? To see what happens. So let's do another function that's going to be called define, and it's going to be add any 2 numbers, or no, not add. We're going to say test add any 2 numbers and 1, right? And we're going to define that, and we're going to say, so assert, and we're going to say assert, and we'll call this add or sum of 2 numbers plus 1. That's the name of our function, right? We're going to go here, and we're going to say if we do 10, 20, right? We pass in 10 and 20. It should give us 31, correct? Right? And we can say, let's start off with that, right? So we're gonna run this just like we always do. We wrote our test and we wrote one line of code, what we expect to happen. It's gonna fail because we do not have any, we don't have that function, but let's see it fail. I like to see the failure. So let's run that. And it fails. It says that sum of two numbers plus 1 is not defined as we expected. So let's go and define it. Def sum of two numbers plus 1. And we're going to say here, same thing we did before, right? I'm going to say pass. And I am going to run it again. And now our error should be that it takes two positional arguments, but only one was given. Right? Now, let's go and let's take care of that. So let's say number 1, number 2. Okay? Now, if we run it again, now we have a different error. It expected 31, but it actually got none. Okay? Because our expectation is 31. So now, what if we just do return 31? We run it. And it passes. Great, right? No, it's not great, because if I do assert sum of two numbers plus 1, and we say that it is, let's say 22, 15, that should be 37 plus 1 should be 38. We run it now. Run. Continue anyways. And it fails because it found 31, but it was expecting 38. So what about if we could do number 1 plus number 2, and we can put this in parentheses because those are together, and then we can do this, right? And now if we run this, it's gonna pass, right? But here's the problem with this, right? We already have a function to add two numbers. So why are we doing it over again? And we already have a function to add 1 to a number. So why are we doing that again? What about if we were to say, sum of two numbers, right? Where we can pass in number 1 and number 2, right? And you know what? Before we even do that, I want to show you this, right? So we have sum of two numbers, and let's add a few more examples, because I'm going to show you refactoring, how to make your test better, like not your test, but how to make your code better through your test, right? So let's say we do 6 and 4 is going to be 11. Let's go with 100 and 220. Should be 320 plus 1 be 321. And let's go with 1,000 and, or I don't know, it's too big of a number. Let's go with 57 and 11. That should be 66 plus or 68 plus 1, which would be 69, right? So we have all of these different tests, right? And we have our formula here. Let's run it again. Everything still passes, right? My math was correct. But here's a problem. We already have a function. We have two functions, one to add two numbers together and one to plus 1 to it. So why are we doing it all over again? Why are we not using the function that we have? So what I'm going to say is, let's do sum of two numbers, because when we run the test, everything should still pass. It should still pass. So we do sum of two numbers, number 1, number 2. So let's run it right now, see what happens, okay? Run, Continue anyways. Now it says that the sum of two numbers returns 30, but it's actually expecting 31. But we have a function for that. So what about if we were to say the sum, see how I do this. Let's do, you can do it like this. I mean, there's different ways you could write this. Whatever is going to help you understand it better. But let's say sum of two numbers equals sum of two numbers with number 1 and number 2. And then instead of this line, I guess I have to change the name of this actually. Let's call this results, right? And then we do sum of two numbers plus 1. So we're going to be returning sum of two numbers plus 1. We're going to be passing in the sum of the two numbers that we got from up here, right? And we can run that again. Oh, wait, what did I know what I did. All right, so sum of, I put the wrong method name in there. It's not sum, it's add any number to 1. So the function is add any number to 1. So now we have this, right? And we're passing in this right here, which you'll learn in the Python course. But so it's doing it's assigning this variable to the result of sum of two numbers function plus 1. We run that, do that, and boom, look at that. Everything still passes, which is a good sign. Another way that you could do it, right, is instead of doing like this line right here, you could say sum of two numbers and pass it number 1. So you're passing in the function, the result of the function inside of another function, right? Number 1, comma, number 2, right? Simple as that. And now when we run it again, still passes. So the different ways that they're showing you that you can do this in the course, you have your tests. And for me, in particular, knowing that I have my test, especially coming from a QA background, knowing that I have my test to confirm everything that I did, that it works, and seeing those green check marks means the world to me, gives me a lot more confidence. So now if I run all the test cases, and it passes, right? And now here's the last part where writing these test cases is important. So what if I wanted to make a modification to this function right here, right? If I wanted to make a modification so that I could, let's say I wanted to be, I get a request. I want to see what numbers are being passed in, right? So now, because I'm going to be making a modification to the function, I'm going to say, all right, so let's say I just want to print it out. Print number 1. And I'll say, we'll do it like this, right? Let's make it an F string. And I'm going to say number 1. And I'm going to say number 1 that's being passed. And I'm going to say print number 2 that's being passed. Because if you want to see it. So now I made changes to the function. I might have broke something. So guess what I have to do? I have to run all my tests over again. And look at that, boom. Number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2, all of them that are being passed, and all of our tests still passed, right? And what if I also want to print out the number that's being passed into here? So let's say I print the X value. I wouldn't name this X, I'd say, I'd probably name it, and I'm making another modification. Number to add to 1, right? And so now, see, I have error. So just making this change, right? And if I run it with this, if I run my test with this, I'm going to get a failure. What is my failure? Um, a bunch of there's a bunch of failures, but mainly because I changed this and it's gonna be here. So now if I update this, and I run it again, and everything passes, right? So very, very basic, very, very introductory. But I think that if you wrap your mind around how to test your code, it's going to, number one, allow you to write better code and give you a much better learning experience because you'll be able to see things pass, things fail. You'll see why the failure is happening and what to actually search. Because a lot of times I've seen people where they're spending hours upon hours and upon hours trying to figure why their code is not working when you could actually learn how to test your code. And then based on the test that you write, you can see, okay, what's going right, what's going wrong. So I would say that it might be helpful to invest some time learning in the different, like how to actually use the testing frameworks, how to have a testing mindset in order to help you become a even better developer. Like other the developers that I work with, they have a very, very strong testing mindset, and that's why their code is always so good. Why I find a minimum amount of defects in the work that they produce, right? But go back to full screen. So that is it for today. Curious to hear your thoughts on, like, would it be helpful if you actually learn how to test your code, test your application before you even start to create your application, before you even learn how to actually write the code? Because there's coding involved in testing it, but learning how to write how to test your code where it says, all right, if I do this, this is my expectations, and if I don't get those expectations, let me find a way to get those expectations and then continue running it over and over and over and over again. Because I'm telling you, I've seen people, they write 100 lines of code and they run it and it fails and they have no idea what's the problem, how to fix it. My method is incrementally write a couple of lines of code, run your test. Write a couple of lines of code, run your test. See what the errors are. Very, very basic, so that you can have, so that you can understand it a lot better, so that it can make sense to you. Now, what the reason that I think that these different learning platforms do not go into, how to test your code, writing unit tests and stuff like that, is because a lot of people find it boring. They find it boring. It's like, oh, I just want to create something. I just want to see something. I was talking to somebody who was, trying to start a startup or something like that. And I said, do you have any testing involved? And they said, no, we're trying to get to market, so we don't have any testing, we don't have any QA, we don't have any of that. I was like, do they even have a unit test? And some people, they do not write unit tests because they want to get their thing out. I mean, even for myself on some of these live streams, like when we're doing something, like I don't really write the unit test because it's not really production code, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on the air, like writing all these tests out. But the right thing to do would be to write out unit tests first, and then to write out our code. If it's really important to make sure your application works, then we should really invest the time into testing it. And I think a great way to start off is by learning how to test your code before you actually write your production code. So let me know your thoughts. Just my take on it. I think like when a lot of times when I'm learning these different languages, learning how to test it first has helped me tremendously, and maybe it might help you as well. Maybe it might not. Let me know. Let me know your thoughts on my take on this. And did you find it helpful or not? We're gonna wrap it up for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Do me a big, big favor on your way out. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know every time we go live and drop new content, as well as go to techcoachdraft.dev. If you need one-on-one coaching from me, I am here for you to help you level up. I will help you, learn how to code. I will help you learn more about cybersecurity, whatever the case may be. Even if I am not an expert in the field, my strategy is expert level, right? And with that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. You guys have a great, great rest of the day. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, all of that good stuff. Make sure you check out my album that just dropped on Spotify, right? Just search for Tech Coach Ralph and it should be there. It should be on Spotify, Apple Music, all the YouTube Music, all the different platforms, and we will run it up from there, right? But with that being said, Tech Coach Ralph, we are out.
We slanging massive code. We slanging massive code. Learned the code while the city slept tight. Now I'm slinging lines that spark like late night. From Python webs to TypeScript skies. React in my veins and APIs that rise. Keyboard clacking, I'm stacking gold. Syntax flows like stories untold. Drinking caffeine, I breathe it in cold. From morning dawn till the night unfolds.
My code goes long, my code goes deep. Caught in the stream where the data don't sleep. Need my digits, better call my line. Slanging massive code like a story time.
In the hustle jungle where the bytes meet still. Digital canvas where I paint and fill. JavaScript whispers in the code I weave. Tech dreams blossom in the lines I conceive. Lines so slick they can't be caught. Variables twist in every plot. Python powers every thought. JavaScript legit, hitting the right spot. My code goes long,
my code goes deep. Caught in the stream where the data don't sleep. Need my digits, better call my line. Slinging massive code like a story time.
Stacks on stacks build my empire tall. Debugging dreams where the errors fall. Lines of brilliance break the darkest night. Script so dope you can see me in the light. TypeScript magic on my fingertips. Reacts to canvas where logic flips. API dances syncing clips. My code's a song where data drips.
My code goes long, my code goes deep. Caught in the stream where the data don't sleep. Need my digits, better call my line. Slanging massive code like a story.